22 years ago, my mother's best friend traveled with her colleagues one Friday morning from Lesotho going to Botswana for an aerobics event that was being held on a Saturday. When she came back on a Sunday late evening, just rest. That would be the last moment that her heart could keep her alive to see the next day and the other and the other. She was a tall, fit woman, not the kind of woman that could be your typical ideal woman who suffers from a heart failure. But yet that organ, that human usually say houses love, failed to love her enough to carry her on. 2 years ago, at gym, I felt a sharp pain on my chest, and I knew that I needed to rush myself to the hospital because at that moment, I used to struggle to breathe in and out, a simple activity that people don't even care about. But when I got to the hospital, I got the shocking news that I was near suffering a heart failure. Now, in as much as the doctor told me that I was lucky to be alive, I kept asking myself simple questions. How could a 20-something-year-old young lady who hardly drinks and smokes, who eats vegetables only, and the only type of sugar sweetness she would have is a few drops of honey in her tea, be a victim of heart failure? The truth is, the face of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, is no longer what it just used to be. A very obese man or woman carrying a bottle of beer in one hand, a cigarette on the other, and junk food on the table. The face of cardiovascular disease is you and I. And right here, right now, we need to start talking about the most important topic, matters of the heart. Now, the World Economic Forum in 2015 released a report saying that non-communicable diseases will cost the world $47 trillion in lost economic output by 2030. And in one study by Ashley Kids, she says that cardiovascular disease is one form of non-communicable diseases that attributes to about 50% of global deaths, majority being in sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, and in East Africa the most. And you would know Nigeria and Ethiopia. Now, this means that around 1 million people in sub-Saharan Africa die due to cardiovascular diseases. Now, as you read those statistics, it's not just numbers, as much as I love numbers, it's human lives. And when we start talking about human lives, we need to start thinking differently. But as we think differently, in 2015, I was moved by something. Just like every single person here gets something that moves them, for them to make a change, for them to create ideas, and for them to create things that change the world. I was moved by my love for medicine. Despite my mother being against the idea of me becoming a medical doctor and pushing me into engineering, I knew that we needed to start talking about healthcare and not putting the responsibility in the hands of medical doctors only, and realizing that every single one of us has a responsibility to save the most important things in the whole world, human lives. And because of that, in 2015, I left my job and I embarked on a journey of building a tech startup. And at that time, I called it I Made Tech. Now, when I started I Made Tech, and being a woman, I was moved by one part of the non-communicable diseases, which is breast cancer. And it was shocking to learn that 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed by breast cancer in their lifetime. It was also shocking that in the US, every 29 seconds, a woman has some form of indicator that says that she might have breast cancer. And so because of my mechanical background and being exposed to 3D printing, additive manufacturing, which is a fancy word of 3D printing, we then challenged ourselves with my team how we could start creating breast prosthetics using 3D printing. Just simply create molds and start creating simple products that women in disadvantaged communities can start wearing and still feel fuller and complete. And what's more shocking was that I used to know that this product would address particularly women who are much older, in their 30s, going higher. But I learned that
it's not on yet, right?
It was never about the older women. When I got a call one day from a teacher telling me that one of her students, who is just 14 years old, is suffering from breast cancer and lost a breast. And she needed a breast prosthetic. I started knowing that it was just more than just the disease, that we are living with a ticking time bomb of non-communicable diseases, and we need to start talking about healthcare. We need to stop talking about healthcare from a cure perspective, and we need to start talking about a preventative perspective. See, when you talk about preventative healthcare, you are asking, how can I help someone who's still healthy right now live a longer life? When you talk about care and cure, you are talking about what can I do to help someone who is near death make it through the next day. And in our continent, we've been talking about healthcare from a care-cure perspective. That is why, as a continent, we are feeding so many drugs to people around this continent. Drugs for them to get up for the next day, drugs for them to just survive to see their children grow. We shouldn't be talking about drugs. We should be addressing how we can talk about preventative medicine, preventative healthcare. Beyond doing breast prosthetics, we are challenged a lot more. We are challenged not to talk about just breast cancer as a company. We're challenged to talk about a disease which is cardiovascular diseases. And being mechanical engineers and having a team of software developers and a team of data analysts, we love challenges and we love building tech. We went on to creating a lot of surgical planning models, and part of those surgical planning models were also creating your heart surgical planning models, where we used to help a lot of surgeons do predictive models for them to help in doing heart surgeries. But as we questioned a lot of cardiologists about heart surgeries and asked them, where does the problem lie? What causes a lot of people to be going in and out of hospitals with all these surgeries? The biggest problem was that a lot of people's bodies fail because of the fatigue and the pressure that we put on ourselves. And that's when we started realizing that the human body is a biomechanical component. There are specific stresses that we put on ourselves, that as we put excessive load and stress and pressure on ourselves, the human body is bound to fail. And it gave answers to why that moment when I was in gym and training, my heart failed me, because I exercised at a higher and put excessive load on my body more than my body could allow. It explained why my mother's best friend, on that day during aerobics, when she came back, she had put excessive stress on her body and her body failed her. But one thing that shocked me is that As the population in Africa grows, there are people in our continent that are putting excessive stress on their bodies, but we don't care about such people, because the only people we care about when we talk about stress and pressure are the people who sit in the boardrooms, who carry the C-suite positions. We never think about such people in Nigeria. People who work for about 12 to 14 hours every single day trying to survive. So as we started a project in our company of taking the most simple concept of performance wearables, because I had seen that every single person right now are starting to own an Apple Watch or a Fitbit for them to measure their steps or measure their heart rate or any form of performance, the distance they run. For them, it was just for athletic performance, for you to get a free smoothie every single Friday. But we literally started saying, what if those wearables, if we can create low-cost wearables and put around the working population in places such as Nigeria and among drivers or people working in the manufacturing sector, and build a simple app that can detect their heart rate, their blood pressure, and can actually tell signals to the company to say that you need to check the health risk of this person and say to them, please pause, take a rest, and probably come back to work the following day. And maybe, just maybe, we would reduce the statistics of the number of people dying due to cardiovascular diseases every single year. And maybe, and just maybe, we would save the cost of about 47 trillion that is going to be lost by 2030. And such a simple person such as that, a lot of companies need to start talking about what is employee care. A lot of companies need to start addressing what is performance. Performance should not just be about how much the company makes every single year in finance terms. Performance should also be about the people that are delivering the work. How is their livelihood? We need to start taking care of people. Companies need to start taking a responsibility more on human labor, more than just work output. And now we ask a lot of companies right now as a company, beyond just us building the tech, we go to companies every single day and ask them, how do you show more care to a lot of your employees? How can you detect when an employee is feeling sick before they fall in the office so that you are able earlier on to say to them, please, can you take a break? How can you start taking care of them more than just demanding so much from all the employees? Because I have often seen a lot of times from investment banking to the engineering world that we are facing a society where there is so much demand of the working population. And it's time that companies need to start taking a lot more of the people. And there needs to be a new way on how we measure performance. Performance should not be based on the number of projects that you executed. Performance should be based on a ratio, a relationship between the number of the projects that you're able to do versus your healthcare during that time when you're delivering the projects, so that people are able to understand that if this person wasn't able to perform very well, it's because their healthcare wasn't at their best. And it's time that right now in every workplace, we find a way that supports matters of the heart. Thank you.